Hey guys, what's going on? Welcome to Millionaire Mafia. I'm Jake, and I'm really excited for you guys to be here today. I'm going to ruffle some feathers in today's episode, and it's going to be titled, Sorry, Dave, but you're wrong. That is not dumb. All right, so that was a little bit tongue-in-cheek, right? Who am I talking about? Well, unless you've been living under a rock for the last, 15, 20 years, Dave Ramsey is one of the most wide-known and popular financial pundits on the planet today. There's many financial gurus out there that teach a bunch of different things, from finances to mortgages to life insurance to whatever it is, to buying and selling real estate and all those kind of things. Dave Ramsey's big thing, if you don't know it, is about getting out of debt, getting your finances in order, and getting out of debt. His speeches, when he gets up and talks to people, or when he talks on his radio show or on his podcast and things like that, he talks about getting out of debt no matter what, having absolutely zero debt, no loans, owing nobody anything, and doing it with what he calls gazelle-like intensity. Basically, the way a gazelle runs away from its predator is the way you should run away from debt. Now, amongst a few other things, I don't agree with Dave Ramsey on that mindset. I do think that he's right in that you should avoid certain types of debt with gazelle-like intensity, but you also have to take in mind who Dave's target audience is. And I kind of attribute it to school. When you start out in school, you start out in pre-K, 4 years old or whatever, 4 or 5 years old, and then you go into elementary school, and then you go into junior high, and then you go into high school, and then maybe college, and you go on and you continue on your education potentially, or you hit a stopping point at some point. But most people, even if they stop going to formalized education, they're still learning their entire career. Dave Ramsey is pre-K and maybe kindergarten. He teaches his viewers and his customers how to get out of debt when they have zero or near zero financial IQ. People who have 4, 5, 10 credit cards that are completely maxed out. People who have cars they can't afford. People who have houses they can't afford, and all these types of things. And they have very little in the form of assets. So that's who Dave caters to. And for those people, he's great because he helps them recage their mind to understand that what they're doing by taking out a 23% interest loan, essentially by buying a car with a credit card, is a bad idea. And they're going to waste a lot of money on that. So for those people, he is great. But my problem is that he equates all debt, he lumps it all into one big, easy, super easy to follow picture, and that all debt is bad. And because he says anything that is a loan is debt, and anything that is a loan is a liability, because it's debt, it's bad. And with that, I completely disagree. There's a couple of things that I don't agree with him on. We're not going to talk about those in detail, and I'm going to focus on those in videos later on when I talk about different opinions on things like life insurance, his snowball method, and his advice on investments and his projected and advertised returns. But that's for another time. Today, we're just talking about debt. So first, before we go too far, we need to talk about and define debt and what it is. So Webster's dictionary defines debt as something owed, a state of being under obligation to pay or repay someone for something received, or a state of owing to someone or something. So that is the definition of debt. So when you take that at face value, you can see that Dave is right in what he says is, if you owe somebody money, you're in debt. So anytime when you owe somebody money, it could be a loan or credit cards, whatever, you're in debt. The way I look at it though, and like Dave, I didn't come up with these on my own. He didn't come up with any of his information on his own, or very little of it. He took what other people did and said, very smart people, and packaged it all together and put it in a nice, easy to follow training system. And he made hundreds of millions of dollars off of it. And to that, I applaud him. He's great for a certain segment of the population. I look at debt as being classified into three parts. There's productive debt, there's consumptive debt, and there's destructive debt. Productive debt is any debt which increases your cash flow. So we can look at things like rental properties or businesses as things that increase your cash flow. Then you have consumptive debt, debt which doesn't increase cash flow, but is needed to survive or execute your daily functions or, annual functions as a human being. Things like food, shelter, your house, your clothes, transportation to get to and from work and things like that. And as long as those are done at reasonable levels and within your means at the time, not that we can never, the goal is to expand our means, right? But as long as you stay within your means, consumptive debt isn't necessarily bad because in a lot of cases, it actually increases your productivity and your ability to produce more value and increase your cash flow. And here's what I mean. Here's an example. Let's use the car. A lot of people think of a car as a liability. As far as a financial aspect, I agree. It's worth less than when you bought it, and it is not putting money in your pocket. However, it would really suck to have to walk 20 miles to work every day, to and from, rather than driving, right? That's going to take off hours of your day and allow you to produce more during your working day. So in that case, it technically is a drain on your finances in some form of, and it's a consumptive debt, but it allows you to be more productive. So that's a good example. A bad example would be buying a car that you don't need or can't afford. You may have a Escort budget, but you decide to go and buy a Mercedes. That's not very good consumption. And then the last one is kind of on that other side of the scale, which is the destructive debt. And this is stuff that not only kills your cash flow, but it also kills your ability to produce more cash flow because it destroys your personal value, right? Your personal self. This is kind of the worst of the worst, right? This is, drugs, alcohol in excess, really bad foods, eating poorly, being really out of shape, things like that. It doesn't have to be illicit activities. Cheating on your wife or your husband or whatever, like that kind of stuff is not good for you as a person or what you're trying to create, right? But other types of debt would be destructive debt, gambling, lottery, cigarettes, things like that not only take money out of your pocket, not only don't produce any cash flow, but they also decrease your quality of life. Okay, that's destructive. So that's the three types. We got productive, consumptive, and destructive. Okay. The problem with Dave is that he wraps those all up into one thing and he calls them debt. And because he relates debt to liabilities, they're all the same. And I would submit that by definition they may be, but you have to change the way you think about that. So there's another guy out there, and many of you who've probably heard of him. His name is Robert Kiyosaki. I like Robert Kiyosaki. He has a lot of books, and what he does is he just breaks down relatively complex concepts into very easy to understand and easy to follow definitions and procedures. He has a book, and the book I'm referring to, he has a bunch of them, but the book that was his first major one that he wrote was called Rich Dad, Poor Dad, What the Rich Teach Their Children About Money That the Poor Do Not. And in that book, he defines a few things. So he defines assets and liabilities. Asset, he says, in simple terms, is anything that puts money into your pocket. A rental property that cash flows, a business that makes money, right? Any type of liability is something that takes money out of your pocket, right? It takes it away. A car, your house, because think about it, your mortgage, you're paying money every month to live there. Now, it's consumptive debt, but it's still a liability. So, like I say, cars, houses, boats, things like that, especially when you go on the backside of consumptive where you're buying things that not only are a liability, but they're a liability that you don't need or that is providing you no value or increasing your productivity. Like I said, a car can increase your productivity and can be a indirect form of producing cash flow. And meaning that it allows you to be more productive, right? It's not directly affecting your cash flow, but it's indirectly affecting it. He also talks about debt, just like Dave Ramsey, but he talks about good debt and bad debt. Now, what is good debt and what is bad debt? Because Dave says that all debt is bad. We should avoid it and run away from it with gazelle-like intensity, remember. So why would this guy, who is also talking about becoming financially free, just like Dave, talk about getting into debt? Well, the difference with Robert Kiyosaki is that he's more focused on assets and liabilities. The debt is just a vehicle and just a method in which you acquire assets. Now remember, an asset has to put money into your pocket for it to be defined as an asset. If you get a loan, which is debt, and that loan buys you a property or a business, and that business or property loses money every month, that's bad debt. You didn't buy an asset, you bought a liability. Okay? Now, if you take that same money and you buy a property or you buy a business that puts money in your pocket every month, it is now an asset. It cash flows every month, and that is good debt. Okay? So there is good debt. You just have to make sure you buy right. Let me use this example too. And like I said, I'm not refuting that debt is money that is owed, and that's what Dave Ramsey said. But what I'm trying to say is that debt isn't bad as long as it's used properly. Let me use this example. And I want you to answer this after I ask the question. And I want you to, I'll give you a couple seconds, and then I'm going to tell you my take on it. So if I have a house that's worth $200,000, and let's say it's one I'm living in, so it's my house. It's worth $200,000, and I have a loan on the property for $100,000. How much debt do I actually have? So most people would probably say, Jake, you've got $100,000 in debt, because that's what your loan is. And to them, I would say, I don't agree. I believe that I have zero debt. You say, oh, well, you can believe whatever you want, Jake. Okay, got it. This isn't pie in the sky, rainbows and unicorns stuff. I'm saying I have zero debt, and I have $100,000 in equity. And the reason I'm saying that is because, yes, I have a loan that I owe somebody on something, but I have equity of $100,000. If I sold that house, I'm going to have $100,000. That's not debt. That's an asset. Or is it? It's not, right? Because it's taking money out of my pocket in the form of a mortgage. So let's flip this one a little bit. Same house, $200,000. I owe $100,000 on it still. But now I'm using it as a rental. And I'm renting it for $2,000 a month. The mortgage and other expenses, maintenance, repairs, property management, all those kind of things, come out to $1,500 a month. So now I have zero debt. I have $100,000 in equity, just like before. And I also have $500 a month in cash flow coming into my pocket. So now I've turned that liability without debt, right? Because it was a liability, but I had $100,000 in equity. So now I turn that into an asset because I rent it out. So I have zero debt, I have $100,000 in equity, and I have $500 a month. The problem that I see with 99% of the Dave Ramsey followers is that they take his advice, follow it to the T, which is good to follow his advice to the T, at least to start, to recage your mind on how to think about finances, but they stop there. They stop learning in pre-K, in elementary school, and they don't ever go into high school and then college and then on-job training. They don't go any further. We would think that's completely asinine if we did that with our kids and we put them in, pre-K, and we sent them back to pre-K every year. And every year they went back to pre-K. That would be ridiculous. And why should it be any different with your financial IQ, with your financial education? You have to expand it. I'm not saying you have to do anything different. Keep in mind here, I'm not making videos and I'm not creating content here on this channel for people who have a scarcity mindset. If you're looking to skimp and save for 65 years so that you can eke out an existence in retirement, then go ahead and follow Dave Ramsey to the letter And I guarantee you that's exactly what you're going to get. He is good for that. What I'm teaching here at the channel, though, is to have an abundance mindset. I'm not just trying to teach an abundance mindset. Mindset is great, but without action, it does nothing. I'm going to teach you the step-by-step processes, techniques for how to actually achieve financial independence. Your path, your educational career is going to be different than mine. It should be. You should align your financial education and your career to fit and align with the way you're trying to do your life and the way you're trying to run your business, right? And your goals and how you want to manage your family. What I am saying is that if you just stick to one side, to one thing, and you follow that forever, and you don't look outside, you're significantly limiting yourself. If you do something and you've looked outside and you've looked at other things and none of that aligns with what you want to do or who you want to be, then fine, stick with that. And that's totally cool. But I see too many people that just say, oh, Dave says debt is bad. I'm going to pay off everything. I'm going to pay off my mortgage. Instead of having a 2.5% 30-year fixed rate on my house when I can make 15, 20, 50+% on the assets that I buy, that's retarded. Why would I do that? I pay 2.5% for my mortgage, right? I'm making over 100% on some of my return, on some of my investments every year, and I do it every year. And I'm not saying that to brag. I'm saying that I have the ability because I advanced my education, my financial IQ from pre-K to junior high to high school, and now I'm working on graduate stuff, right? Like that's where you should be wanting to get to, okay? And that's all I'm saying. I don't want you guys to think I'm dogging on Dave Ramsey. I'm dogging on you because you follow or you believe or you've used that program. I did it. I used it too. And it was good to get me to where I needed to be to recage my brain and be like, hey, you're stupid. Stop buying shit you don't need. Figure things out. Get a budget straight. Figure out where your money's going. And then learn. Okay? Learn. And that's all I'm saying. I hope you enjoyed that. I hope you got something out of that. I hope there's somebody out there that has the balls to, because I know they disagree. I know there's people out there that disagree with me. I hope there's somebody that has the balls to comment. And I promise this isn't going to get into a pissing match, right? I want you to comment about things that you think you don't agree with myself and the reasons why. And I think we should have a discussion. We should be able to have that discussion, myself and anybody here. All right. I encourage and I invite that because the way, again, I do things is not the way that everybody is going to do it, or the way I believe is not the way that everybody else believes. And that's fine. I really appreciate you checking out this channel. I really appreciate you guys being here. I love seeing the comments that I've been seeing, and I hope to create a lot of value here by a bunch of other videos. I've got a wall with, I think I'm at 28 different topics, and I've got sub bullets on each one. So we've got years worth of stuff out here that I can put. Those are just those are the ones I could fit on the board. Okay, so it doesn't mean I know all the topics that you guys want to hear. So if you have anything that you'd like to see or have me discuss or talk about, please comment below and tell me what you'd like to see, and I'd be happy to do something on it to the best of my abilities, and then have a discussion about it. What would really help us out here is if you subscribed to the channel so that you can get the updates right when we drop these videos, and so that you can push these out to other people and bring them into the fold, and so that we can all learn to be financially independent and wealthy together. We'll see you later. Here's to your wealth.